Now, this morning, the White House is under pressure to do more to help arm Ukraine in this war with Russia. A bipartisan group of lawmakers say the Biden administration needs to take further steps, including sending those Soviet-era jets from Poland to Ukraine, a move the White House previously rejected over concerns it could lead to a direct conflict with Russia. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitali joins us now from Washington. Ali, good morning. So, of course, the Polish jets have been a big back and forth. There was some miscommunication, unfortunately, between the U.S. and Poland. But tell us who's behind this push right now, this push here in the U.S. from lawmakers. What are they saying about the president's concerns that it could escalate this conflict further?
Well, look, of course, those concerns exist. I spent the better part of last week in Philadelphia with House Democrats who were echoing those concerns, whether or not those jets would be ready, whether or not the Ukrainians would even be able to use them, given what the situation is on the ground, how they would get there. All of those logistical concerns are part of this. And then there's the other part of this where the Ukrainians are holding their own on the ground and asking for more help. Some senators, a bipartisan group of them who went to Poland over the weekend, saying yesterday on the Sunday shows, that's the U.S. role here, to help. Listen.
What the Ukrainian people are asking for is just the ability to defend themselves, give them the ability to try to stop some of this Russian superiority in terms of air power, to be able to save lives and hopefully end up with a peaceful solution to this. If we don't figure out a way to help Ukraine push back, that's much less likely.
So look, that's the thinking there from some senators and frankly other House members who I've been speaking to. The U.S., though, over the weekend announcing that it was going to send another $200 million in support, including anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles. That brings the total of aid, both humanitarian and military in nature, to $1.2 billion over the last year from the U.S. to Ukraine.
Yeah, so Ali, what else besides these particular weapons do lawmakers think the White House should be doing to aid Ukraine? And is there really anything they can do to force the president's hand to take more action?
Yeah, look, this is really one of those things where we've seen Congress be vocal about what they want to see happen on the ground, and certainly there's a role to play here. We watched last week, for example, a push to ban Russian oil and energy imports, but really the story out of Congress has been they've always sort of gone a half a step further than the administration. There is a sustained pressure campaign, even as people are on all sides of these issues, both in terms of a no-fly zone, which is something that has been talked about a lot on Capitol Hill and, of course, in national security circles. But then, of course, there's a lot of conversation that I've been having with my sources about concern over humanitarian relief money. You're hearing from our folks on the ground who are doing such amazing, stellar reporting about the concerns that a lot of the advocates and groups on the ground have about this wave of aid being enough, but then also the refugee and humanitarian crises that have yet to actually manifest on the ground. They already put millions of dollars this past week towards the humanitarian crisis there. At the same time, you got to have a feeling that's not going to be the last time that we see Congress voting to push money, humanitarian and otherwise, towards Ukraine.
Absolutely. Actually, last week, Congress passed that bill that included nearly $14 billion in aid to Ukraine. Anything else in the works?
Yeah, well, we are going to have to see them. Last week, the White House said that they were going to try to revoke the World Trade Organization most favored nation status of Russia. That effectively means that all the favorable tariffs that are in place for countries that have that designation would go away. It does mean we're going to see price spikes, but at the same time, the House and Senate are going to have to vote to do that. We saw the House in a bill last week say that they wanted to have that World Trade Organization status reviewed and urging other WTO folks who are in that to reconsider Russia's orientation there. Now, of course, with the White House announcing it, the House very supportive. Speaker Pelosi at the end of last week saying that she thought that that was the right move and praising the administration. But we have seen them continuously try to push ahead and try to keep the pressure on the administration on this.
Absolutely. Ali Vitali, as always, thank you so much. See you soon.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.